Let's see, here we go. And we are live. Welcome to Glenmary Vocations Facebook page. This is a live broadcast from our vocations office in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm Brother David with Glenmary Home Missioners, and we have a special guest this afternoon up from the missions in Tennessee, Brother Joe Steen. You want to say hello, everybody?
Welcome. Good to speak to you all.
They can see you, but
Yeah,
you
I can't see them, so I was going to say good to see you all. I think that would work too
we
well.
trust that they're out there. But Brother Joe Steen is a Glenmary brother who's serving in the missions in Granger and Union County, Tennessee. So we're happy to have him up here with us today. And originally, because I know you come from Chicago area.
Long time ago.
But thinking back to those days, how did you first learn about Glenmary missioners, or how did you realize that you were called to be a Glenmary missioner?
Well, it was first I kind of realization called to be a brother, and then in talking to the parish priest, he mentioned Glenmary, and at the time there was a Glenmary brother living in Chicago, so I talked to him, and then went on a week's mission trip. I forget shortly after that, and then came the following September. Glenmary was the only group I ever looked at. It was kind of unusual for folks.
Wow.
And
So, just within a year, you were introduced to Glenmary. You discerned your call as a missioner.
Probably 6 months. The thing to become a brother was pretty much established. And then Glenmary was the first community, and it just seemed like a good fit. And discernment and prayer in it.
Wonderful. And I guess one thing I always think about, so often when I'm talking with a young man, this day and age, they've never met a religious brother before, or if I'm giving a talk at a parish, they've never known that there were brothers that exist in the Catholic Church. So how would you describe the ministry of a religious brother, or the call of a religious brother per se?
I would say I kind of had the opposite experience. I went to a Christian Brothers school, so I had, and then growing up in Chicago at the time, there were lots of sisters, brothers, and priests around. But I think the whole thing about becoming a brother, to me, it very much is kind of somewhat, for lack of a better word, is the lay aspect of it and the community aspect of it. And the call I felt, because at the time I was in Chicago, I was a carpenter, and that was something I had wanted to be since I was a little kid. So the two seemed to fit together. And then I've sensed that oftentimes that as a brother, at least in my experience and realizing it, it's easier to identify with people, for lack of a better word, and particularly with the type of work that I do. And I think oftentimes this gets confusing in our context, in the mission context. Brothers oftentimes refer to a minister in that. But I think in the Catholic Church, it's a very specific call. I mean, there's not a great number of brothers. I think oftentimes when people think of brothers, they think of the monastery or teaching or something like that. That was my experience of brothers, was teaching. But to realize that there's so much more. And the gifts that I felt, and it's kind of a mystery too. One thing is I've learned in life that there's the mystery of religious life and the call to religious life. People ask me, why are you a brother? And I said, well, God wants me to be a brother.
Right.
You know, and we'll explain, how do you explain what God wants? I guess, for lack of a better word. People say, why'd you become a priest or something like that? God called me to be a brother. And that's probably what the best explanation I can give, you know.
And as much as we discern that call and continue to grow in that call, there's still a mystery that surrounds it. There's still a mystery that surrounds
if we compare it to when a couple gets married, and I used to ask guys a lot of times, you know, why is this woman different than the other woman? And whatever they describe describes millions of women. But to them, this woman was very different.
Sure.
And then that's kind of my experience with the call of brotherhood. We all call different vocations, but it's kind of that personal call that God gives us. You know, it's what's unique to each individual. And it's that mystery. And I think it deepens as life goes on.
Sure.
Rather than, it's not a thing of answers or surety or whatever, but there's a sense of joy and peace that kind of confirms it.
That's the key there, the joy and the peace. That's, you're living out as your response to this call from God to follow.
Well, I always tell folks that, you know, I always let people say the secret of happiness is to find out what you love to do and find somebody to pay you to do it. You know,
Right.
I think the secret of happiness, except joy is a much better word. Happiness can be somewhat superficial. The secret of really joy is finding out what God wants you to do and then to do it.
Finding out what God wants you to do and do it.
That's where you're
That's
going to be
where
happy.
you found the joy.
Yeah, you won't be happy anywhere else.
And one thing you mentioned in there about that call and that your call specifically was the relationships and the people relating to you as your jobs in ministry you mentioned. Now, specifically, what kind of ministry, or how would you describe your ministry as a Glen Mary brother, or what kind of work jobs do you do in the missions?
It's been a variety of things over the years, but I guess the primary thing has been home repair, home construction, those type of things, even for a while in our building crew, building churches and church halls, but very much those kind of things. And oftentimes in an ecumenical setting with lots of different folks from different faiths and whatever, or working for people 99% of the time who are not Catholic, but you know, anywhere from working on the complete house to a very simple repair job. And so when people see you working, oftentimes, a lot of our places, a preacher, a minister will have another job, but oftentimes not. But when you come and you're working with someone taking off their roof and they're working with you, and there's a whole sense of relationship that develops there that's very natural. And it's once again somewhat hard to describe, but it's that sense of one with other folks in a very basic level.
And so I mean, you continue in Union County and Granger County of maybe taking off somebody's roof, but obviously putting it back on. You're
Hopefully,
doing
yeah, before it rains anyway.
So-
It wouldn't be a very good ministry if you just took them off.
Have you ever thought of how many homes that you've worked on over the years in your or
No, people ask me that question all the time, and that's
Yeah.
something that it doesn't make any difference.
Mhm.
One of the things I love about God is that God's not into numbers. I'm not a great mathematician, but you know, the parable of the people all getting the same pay for working different hours.
Right.
You know, God's not logical. And that's my salvation. I think God's mercy and the fact that God is not logical, that it's just
Not a
so beyond
scorecard.
us. Part of the mystery. It's so beyond
Sure.
us
Sure.
how God doesn't think, but how God is. That's so beyond us. So whether it's one house or 10 houses or 100 or whatever, it really doesn't.
And I think it's a beautiful ministry. I mean, having, years ago worked with you on a roof in Vicksburg, Kentucky.
We put it back on that time?
We did, I think. Or to see those walls going up, for the first time, there's a great joy in that. And I think Glen Mary has such a, what's the word I'm looking for, such a long history of the building brother, in the sense, a brother that's been involved in building crews on churches and homes for families, low income. So that need has been there since the beginning of Glen Mary and continues to be. But kind of thinking beyond that, what kind of would that be a future need for Glen Mary Brothers, or would there be other ministries that you see are just as important or crucial for future Glen Mary Brothers?
Oh, I think there's all kinds of ministries available to brothers. I think that's one of the gift of that vocation to brotherhood. I mean, there's always going to be the need, I think, for the type of ministry I've been doing. But anything from teacher, lawyer, social work, or just being present with people, responding to people's needs in any way, whether that requires a profession or not. I mean, there's such a variety, I think. That's one of the gifts, as I mentioned, that we can't have as brothers. That, well, you know yourself, working in a factory, or Kurt working in a factory, those kind of ministry, or working at Parish Brother, or evangelizing. I mean, the list is, it's quite extensive.
Nurse, social work.
So,
There's so many different.
I mean, not a
varieties.
nuclear physicist or anything like that, but a teacher or anything. Those are anything that really service in our areas, which is always a great need.
So
Lawyer.
the building brother is definitely a great need, will continue to be so, but as well as a wide variety of ministries would be available for brothers that were studying with Glen Mary. And I think one thing that makes us unique, or the way that we live out our ministry, or our apostolic ministry as builder, or as social worker, or as translator, is in the fact that we share in an oath that we make as
Mhm.
Glenmarians. And in that oath, we obviously take a promise of poverty, chastity, obedience, and prayer.
Mhm.
And so for you, reflecting back on how has that enhanced your ministry, or how has that given witness to who you are in the ministry that you're doing in the missions over the years?
Well, I think at a very basic level, one of the things I love about the Catholic Church is that sense of unity. We're all in this together. There's no such thing as a solitary Catholic. And that thing carries over into a community like that we have here in Glenmary. The sense of that we are called to be a band of brothers. That's not my phone, folks.
But the phone calls are coming in already because
Yeah,
we're
right,
on
yeah.
a live broadcast.
Yeah, I'm sure. We are called to be a band of brothers, and very much a part of this, how we live out that oath. And you have to go back to the whole aspect about prayer, what a unifying force prayer can be. And there again, that's a mystery how prayer works. But what a gift that is, and how that can be so unifying. And then the fact that the celibacy thing, I think oftentimes people wonder about that and whatever. But once again, I think if that's something God has called you to, you can be very happy as a celibate and very joyful. And that gives you that sense of there's an opportunity to have so many different people in your lives.
Right.
I always tell folks some of the best lessons about celibacy I've learned are some families that I'm very close to and have watched their kids grow up over the years. They sometimes kid them if I'm having a problem with celibacy. I just visit and be around the family for a few days. My celibacy is good for another 10 years.
The realization that you don't want to be a father in a family.
Well, all they have to deal with whatever.
All the
But to see
challenges,
that,
right.
and that has enhanced my celibacy, and so many ways, that understanding of marriage and what a couple deals with, and then the special call that they have too. But I would say is, if you're called to that, and in the poverty, I always quote my mother used to always tell us that thank God for nothing, for there's no bother to it.
I think I have to think about that.
But that's something for folks to think about, really.
Can you say it again?
Thank God for nothing, for there is no bother to it. And that is my phone.
That one is your phone.
What?
That one is your
Your
phone.
phone, yeah.
Do you need to take that one, or do you?
Probably my sister.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you being here, Joe. We thank you for coming out to the broadcast, and we will sign off. So
I hope it
next
was
time-
helpful.
Yeah. Thank you all, and God bless you, and join us again
Hello?
next time on one of our Meet of Missioners here at
Hi.
Glenmary.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.